official Erdos Miller podcast, where we spend our non-productive time talking about everything drilling tech and capture the latest insight from industry leaders on our show. I'm your host, Ken Miller.
And I'm your co-host, David Erdos.
And today we brought an industry leader and a good friend, Mr. Stuart Mclaughlin from Magnolia R&D.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Stuart, I did say your last name correctly, right?
You nailed it. Yes, sir.
Perfect. I've never been to Scotland. I've really still got to go. Hopefully we can go together, but just want to make sure I'm getting it correct.
Just get your golf game up to par. We'll be good to go.
Oh, okay. Okay. See, all right. Yeah. It may take a little bit of investment on my part. I'm not sure.
I hear you.
So, Stuart, tell us a little bit about your background in the industry. How'd you get started? Where'd you come from?
So I'm from a small fishing town in Scotland called Erdos on the east coast. It's between basically Edinburgh and Edinburgh and Aberdeen. And I started my life out as a mechanical engineer. I was actually manufacturing equipment. And I remember one day manufacturing all the stuff for the rigs. And I asked my boss what it was. And he told me it was slickline tools. I had no clue. So not long after that, there was a job applied for I saw for the slickline operator on the rigs. So I'm like, I build the tools. I mean, I machine them. I bet as well go find out what they're all about. So I applied for a job with a company called Expro North Sea. They did slickline and well testing. And I got the job. Shocked. So that started my career in the oil and gas industry. That was back in 32 years ago, thereabouts. And so I went from slickline running tools to learning about, through tubing packers and stuff like that. So I ended up with a company called Petroleum Engineering Services back in about 1990, I think it was. And I started on completion systems and then got into Petroleum Engineering Services. We changed our names to Well Dynamics, which is now widely known across the planet as for intelligent well systems. So I was a part of the team that helped develop and deploy, and then eventually business development for selling the systems across South America, North America, UK. And then ultimately, the company was acquired by the Big Red, Halliburton. By that time, I was asked to transfer to the US, to the Houston office, because I was traveling overseas all the time from Scotland. I was never home. So 25 years ago, I traveled to the US and moved my family here. And here we stay. I was going to give it 5 years, and I'm 25 years in. So here I am. The weather and the people keep me in Texas. I love it here.
Okay, well that's good to hear. I can't say that too many people say that about Texas weather, but it's home for me, and I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, 4 months of the year is pretty bad in the summertime, but then we've got 8 months of just gorgeous weather.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some proximity to the equator helps a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What really makes you passionate about our industry, right? What really appeals to you?
I mean, I've had such vast experience. I've been so fortunate. I've been on. I worked 10 years in the North Sea. I've worked in the Colombian jungles, the Brazilian rainforest. I've worked in the Arctic, the deserts of the Middle East, and I've been exposed to so much. Our industry is amazing. The technology that's out there, folks just don't comprehend how they get that stuff in their car's gas tank. So it drives me. I see things when I'm on rigs or I'm, land rigs offshore, deep water, or subsea, and I see things. And I'm like, why are they doing it that way? And I come to find out that because we always have. And so there's innovators out there, of course, but I started to see problems, and I think, well, why didn't somebody fix that? So what drives me is nowadays I'm out, of course, with the digital age, I'll be out in a job and I'll see somebody making up tools by hand, and I'm like, can't we do it digitally, or can't we stick a sensor on there to make it smarter, or a hydraulic actuator to make it so you don't have to use hand tools, and just all that sort of innovation and new technology and merging different things together, electronics, digital, hydraulics, smart mechanics, is what I love to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I mean, challenging the status quo is a lot of what drives us as well, and I do think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find another industry where you'd have the chance to go to all these just really edge of the world places, right? You're
not unless you're a soldier.
Yeah, I mean it's like soldier or oil and gas, right?
Right, and I feel all of us in the industry, we are soldiers. I mean, we battle throughout the years to build our companies up and our bank accounts, and then boom, along comes someone drops a big bomb on us, and it takes away the oil price, so we have to suffer for a few years. So these ups and downs of the oil industry, you've got to be a real soldier to make your way through it. I've been in it for 32 years. I have seen several downturns, and they are painful for everyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, not sure I met anybody who enjoys them just yet. I know people get into like a buying mode or like a aggressive mode during the downturns, but I mean, fun or enjoying it, not so much, right?
Yeah, we don't enjoy it. One of the things that Magnolia do excel at is in the downturns, we've always focused right on technology. Well, downturn comes along, it actually gives you time, although the money's time, to sit back and go, well, what should we do differently? What do we need to build so that when the uptick comes back, we've got an edge? Which is why we've got, on our website, we've got half a dozen products, but in our portfolio, we've probably got 15 to 20 different products that we've developed over the years. We just haven't marketed. And a lot of those come from the downturns, trying to think outside the box and become more innovative.
I totally agree, right? I think downturns are one of the most interesting times to work on something new because you have a moment to breathe. And look, you talk about that with anybody in the industry, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, you should totally keep on engineering during the downturn, never stop." Right? It's really difficult to find groups that live that and not actually just talk it, right? And
right.
And especially because a lot of people get this, kind of feeling like, oh, you're just trying to justify a unnecessary job during the downturn or whatever. And that's really not true. Like, I've lived it myself where like we were, really kept fighting through the downturn and we're just perfectly timed on the next upturn. And so it's really important to keep that going however you can through these tough times.
Definitely.
So how does this downturn compare to the other ones you've experienced?
That's a really good question. Being self-employed, oddly enough, I don't have to worry about it as much as being employed by a big company, right? Like one of the major service companies or operators. So I remember, when we were acquired and we were, Halliburton had us, and the downturn came, I had to worry about my job every time I went in, right? And they would call a town hall meeting, and you knew folk were getting laid off, and your heart sank for everyone else, and you worried about yourself. But being an entrepreneur and having your own company, you're preparing for the downturn because you know it's coming. That's what age does for you. I'm getting old now. I'm 54, so I know there's one coming. So I plan for it. The other thing is, I found that our technology, because we are cutting edge and we do think outside the box, that whilst I'd call us a boutique company. Plus, they don't always want to use us throughout the year on jobs, even though we save them a bit of time and money. When the downturns come, they rely on us to help them save the money. So during this particular downturn, as bad as it is, probably the worst I've ever seen, worse than 86 in my opinion, I think it was 86, it's been good for us. We were quiet for about 2 months, but then we picked up again. So May, June we were quiet, but we're off and running again. We've got work in the Permian, South Texas, West Texas, New Mexico, and Canada, and Wyoming. So we're just non-stop. So I would encourage anyone to go self-employed, as difficult as it is, but I've been by myself now for 15 years, and you just have your own control of your destiny when the downturns hit. And of course, you've got great control of your destiny when the uptick happens again.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that downturn really forces people to be a lot more efficient, and those that survive are usually a lot stronger for it on the outcome.
No doubt.
Stuart, is there any moment in your career, just really specific experiences that you can like look back and kind of connect the dots and say, okay, this just really had a profound impact on me?
Aye. There's a couple actually. So let me start with how I ended up being self-employed, because this had a profound effect on me. I was working for a major service company, and I secured a huge deal, tens of millions of dollars for the sale of the system. And when I got the deal, I was given the smallest bonus you can imagine for the biggest sale ever, right? So that was profound in itself. And I thought, wait a minute, I had this epiphany. If I'm a sales guy and I can sell this well for this big service company, why can't I sell for myself? And that's what forced me to move on and leave a comfortable, great salary, great benefits, nice expense account, traveling the world for them on their dime, to going solo and funding my own companies. Was the fact that they gave me a crappy bonus, and I thought if I can do it for them, I can do it for myself. I maybe can't make, a $50 million sale, but if I can make a $2 million sale for my own company, I've hit the jackpot. And so the way I was treated in the organization is what forced me out. They never forced me to leave or asked me to leave, but it forced me to change my direction in my life. And for the last maybe 17 years now, actually, I've forged my own destiny.
That's fantastic. I had a similar moment in my career where I used to work for Texas Instruments, and I was hesitant to leave. And the entrepreneur that was trying to recruit me to his organization said, "Okay, why don't you want to leave?" And I said, "Oh, I've got job security at TI. I've got, a nice salary and benefits and some future and all this kind of stuff." And he's like, "Well, what's job security?" And I go, "Well, like job security, man, right?" And he's like, "Ken, that's all bullshit. The only job security you make is what you make for yourself in this life, right?" And
Right.
I really took that to heart, and I left the big company and joined a little startup, and so that was pretty profound in my career. It sounds like you had a really similar experience.
You know what's interesting in the big companies is when, and I see every time, I worked at Halliburton Ailey facility off of the Beltway 8 there for a couple of years. And when the downturns came and they were starting to lay people off, all the heads were down, their butts were up. They were working, but they didn't want to be seen. And then when there was no threat of layoffs, everyone was back to the normal day-to-day routine. So what I was noticing was, 80% of the people were there for the job, and maybe 20% were there because they loved their job,
Yeah.
So the threat of unemployment spurs people on, but that's not the way it should be. They should be spurred on all the time, day to day. But I think us entrepreneurs are spurred on because we're the threat is if we don't make money for our company, we don't make money for our family. In a big company, if you're not making money for the organization, they're not doing well, somebody else will help float you along,
Well, I think in a big company, it's just really easy to be removed from the effects, right? Because nothing's changed. The scale's just bigger, right? So, if an employee doesn't do that great of a job for a big company, maybe it doesn't feel the effects so much. But if that goes on for, a really long time, and leadership of those companies don't set their employees up to really focus on the future and provide good returns, and even that big company can kind of fall apart, right?
Right, definitely.
So talk to us about coiled tubing, completions and coiled tubing. This is where you guys are focusing right now. Tell us a bit about basics of that part of the industry and how all that works. And then that would be great. Just give us some education there.
All right. So I started my first company called RC Technology about 17 years ago, and I had a slickline tool, and it was an impact sensor. So when you beat on the jars, it would record that force. And one day, a good buddy of mine, my ex supervisor, actually at Halliburton, says, "Stuart, you need to stick a hole through that tool and put it on coil." And I'm like, "What's coil?" Really? He's like, "Coiled tubing, make your sensor have flow through so you can flow through it." He says, "Because you'll make more money." So I investigated it, and slickline's a cheap man's business, no doubt. No one pays big dollars for slickline. They paid big money back then for coil. So I made my first coiled tubing tool. I still didn't know what coil was really. I had to read up on it. And my company just exploded at that point, just because a good buddy of mine told me to put a hole in the tool. So I got to coiled tubing. For your listeners, coiled tubing is basically a piece of it's endless pipe, meaning there's no joints on it. So the pipe runs about 25,000 feet long, 25 to 30,000 feet of pipe. And it varies in size from, 1 inch up to say 2 7/8. Typical sizes today are 2 3/8 and 2 5/8 coil pipe. And obviously it's got a hole through it, and it's wound up onto this huge reel, like a garden hose almost, except it's steel. And we use that pipe, on the end of the pipe, we attach tools to go in the hole in the laterals, because obviously you can't push wire along a horizontal. So we use the coil, we pump fluids, we can turn mud motors down hole, turn bits, and we can drill out wells, drill out composite bridge plugs after the fracked wells. We can do stimulation with this pipe and all sorts of other remedial interventions. And so one of the things that they lacked, other than the big boys like the Schlumbergers and the Bakers had at the time, they had real-time coil tubing, which is extremely expensive and cumbersome, but there's really no memory tools on coil. So Magnolia embarked on bringing memory technology to the coiled tubing industry. And what we do today is we've got a very high-tech 8-sensor package that runs about 30 inches long, and we attach that to the rest of the mud motor in the bit. It goes in amongst that BHA. And when they're drilling out the wells or whatever operation they're doing, we're recording things like weight and tension, side load and torque, pressure, temperature, G-forces, etc. We get that data post-analysis. So when they come out of the hole, we download the data and we provide the client with an analysis of how the BHA performed. So if you had a problem downhole or something broke, we can provide the analysis as to what was going on. It's kind of like the crux of our company. It's our core product.
So is coiled tubing exclusively used for completions?
Pretty much. Its core application is obviously through tubing drill outs, and treatments of your formation.
So this is something that you'd use, okay, after the drilling process, we drill the open hole, the hole's cased, and they're getting ready to frack, you're going through plugs, or you're, working out an existing well, trying to modify it, right? These kind of applications, right?
Correct.
Are there any other kind of applications for coiled tubing?
I mean, you could use coiled tubing for all sorts of stuff. You can have, our tools are memory-based, but you can have a wire run through the coil. Mm-hmm. It sounds bizarre. You can run if your coil's 25,000 feet long, they pump a wire through it. So it's an electrical wire. And we attach that to the tools, and rather than having my memory tools getting data to surface post-job, you can get live data up through the coil, through that wire to surface. And at the cab, as you're, say, milling out your wells and your plugs, you can see your data real time. So as you slack off at surface X amount of weight to push down in your pipe to affect the drill bit, that weight transfer, so you slack off 10,000 pounds at surface, real time downhole will feedback that it's maybe seeing 2,000 pounds weight on bit, because obviously there's losses between set down weight and then actual weight to bit, and how that weight gets there because of friction between your coil pipe OD and your casing pipe ID, and the lateral extension through the heel and dog legs causes losses. So the real-time effects of that can be seen by having a wire and coil. I mean, other things they do is things like fluid stimulation, acid stimulation on a zone-by-zone basis in a lateral section. So you've maybe got 60 zones, and they can go in there and pinpoint stimulate specific zones rather than just blasting the entire lateral. They can do that with the coil tubing and have pinpoint accurate depth stimulation.
So when you say stimulate, what do you mean?
So you've got maybe you've got scaling on your sand face. You've lost production in a certain area of the lateral, and you want to go back in there, and you'll go down with the coil tubing, and you will pump acid in the affected zones, and to treat to break down the scaling of that area or whatever effects that the rock's seen, and to allow production to come back in. Or you may go down with what's called it's a jetting nozzle, and it has very small ports on it, and you pump 3, 4, 5 barrels a minute, and out these small ports, it's like a pressure washer effect that you use pressure wash your driveway, and there's a high velocity jet comes out the side of this tool, and it will create perforating tunnels for you in the rock rather than running down with perforating guns. So coil tubing can be used for that, to give you a safe way to re-perforate, re-stimulate the well to open it up.
So it's like a water jet that actually cuts through the casing? They
have those actually. They're quite,
wow.
Your listeners should YouTube that. They can actually cut through steel casing in a well using high pressure water. But typically we're cutting through, we're pressuring through the existing pairs and treating that way. But yes, you can create new holes in the actual casing itself and perforate through.
Wow, that's incredible.
So how is the data that these downhole tools log or transmit in real time used? Is it used for drilling optimization or for production? Fill us in.
So the last batches of wells that we performed in and we're way to go into, the latest ones are 42,000 feet. So it's 12,000 feet vertical depth with a 30,000 foot lateral. And, they're going to go in there and attempt to get the coil all the way to TD, total depth, to the toe. What they want to know is, as they're doing that on the first wells, they want to know how much weight transfer they're going to get, how the extended reach tools, so there's vibratory tools on there to break friction between coil pipe and the casing pipe wall. So these anti-friction tools are shaking the pipe all the time, so we can push the pipe along the horizontal section. So they use our technology, and there's other companies that have similar tools to us, not as good. And they want to understand what's the weight transfer from surface to the bit, and are we making ROP? Are we making footage along the lateral quick enough? And if not, then how much losses are we getting between surface slack-off weight and downhole? So if we're slacking off 10, 15, 20,000 at the surface, and we're only getting 1,000 pounds at the bit, we've got a problem. And we need to come out of the hole and reconfigure our operations. So they may pump different gel sweeps, friction reducers, beads. You can pump beads down there to reduce friction on the pipe. So yeah, it's used to post-analysis if they're having problems. The other thing we've done several times is, sadly, fishing jobs, and I say sadly because we're along for the ride recording what's going on, and then a thread breaks on the BHA. So what we can see is the initial fatigue of the thread, because we'll see on the charts where the thread's teed, and then maybe as we drill through 8, 9, 10 more plugs, where the thread actually yielded and failed. So we used that analysis to figure out what was going on at the time with side loading, because we've got a side load sensor, with the vibration, because the G-forces downhole with an extended reach tool are phenomenally high. We record in excess of 100 Gs, which is unacceptable, and that causes damage to equipment. So the data is used to figure out what went wrong if the BHA comes apart, or if something in the BHA actually fails, but we don't lose the BHA. And then it's also used to understand your weight transfer, torque of the motor, output, stuff like that. And if we see issue, then we can change the motors out, change our fluid program, add different frictions, or the bit. Maybe the bit's just not working well enough, we change the bit out. But without the data, you're not going to know what to do, right? You go, well, we never made it to bottom, try again. Well, that kind of thinking is expensive.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So kind of final question, Stuart, we talked a lot about, coiled tubing, your background, being an entrepreneur, getting out there. What kind of advice would you have for people that, are either trying to make it through a very rough time right now, or even looking to get started as an entrepreneur in this kind of time, right?
That's nice. So I've got a big LinkedIn following, excuse me, and I put out there before that being an entrepreneur, you deal with the highs and the lows, and I've been through some extremely tough times. I say to my family and friends, the highest of the high is when you develop a technology, you go out there, you run it, it's successful, and they pay you for it. That's the high being an entrepreneur, the success of that. But no one understands the deepest, darkest hole that comes along when you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your providers who build your equipment for you, and there's no money left in the bank to pay your mortgage. That's the darkest spaces you'll be, and you're in it all alone. So on the one hand, it's run out there and say, everyone should do what we do, but it isn't easy. But on my LinkedIn blogs, I say a lot, do it. There's work out there to be had. And a lot of guys call me up from my LinkedIn blogs and say, Stuart, how do I get started? How do I find money? Should I do it? Or I've got an idea, should I take it to my company? But if you've got an idea for a technology, follow it. It's not hard to start a company. It's cheap to get an LLC, of course. And the struggle for anyone who wants to start a company is having the money in the bank to keep your household going for the best part of a year or two. And if you've got the money to keep your household going for a year or two because you won't be making money, then I would go for it. And in the downturn, if you're sitting at home, pick up a pen and a pad and a pen and write down your ideas and start thinking about it, so that when the upturn comes back, you've maybe got a technology that you're ready to go out there and develop with an investor.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I totally concur with you. I think that, one of the best feelings is when you dream up something yourself, you build it, and then a client, takes it, runs it, gets a benefit from it, enjoys it, and then pays you for it. It's hard to describe that feeling. We all chase it, right?
Yeah. So I had something else to say. What I've always done, and I advise people, start your new business, become an entrepreneur in a downturn. Because if you start your company when we're at our peak, you will fall because it's going to come down. If you start in a downturn, you can only rise up. And I've always advised people to do that, which is why I think we develop our best technologies during the downturn, because as the wave rises again, we're on board with it. So don't wait until you've got, I was going to say $100 oil, but I don't think that's coming back anytime soon. Don't wait till the oil price is sky high and then go, okay, things are great, let's build a company. Do it now. You've got time in your hands anyway, right? Because we're all sat at home. Do it now.
Totally. I mean, I would say that if you wait till the upturn, you're too late. You got to get started during the downturn.
Correct.
Yep. Perfect. Well, Stuart, we really enjoyed having you on the show today. David?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Stuart. That was really, really good. And I believe that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again, Stuart, for joining us on our show today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Be sure to check out our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And thanks again for tuning in today's episode with Mr. Stuart Mclaughlin